Hey, so I'm Benjamin Akey, and I'm giving this talk on behalf of myself and my two colleagues, Jeffrey Burnett and Aubrey Marshall. And in this presentation, we will share the Campus Archaeology Program's investigation of a mid-20th century midden found at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan, and the related history of temporary post-World War II student housing on campus. After the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, also known as the GI Bill, was made law, college enrollment greatly increased in the United States. Institutions of higher education, including Michigan State College, now known as Michigan State University, rushed to open college education to returning veterans and to access the educational funding provided by the GI Bill. However, land-grant colleges like MSU were facing increasing enrollment numbers on campuses not significantly updated since the 1930s. At MSU, pre-GI Bill enrollments peaked in 1943 to just above 11,000 before plummeting to around 6,500 in 1944. By fall 1946, however, enrollments had increased back to over 15,000. The student population continued to increase throughout the 1940s and 1950s, peaking at 26,000 in 1956. As early as December 1944, college administrators were aware of the need to expand housing for the growing number of veteran students, with a particular need for married student facilities. Simply put, the school's pre-war infrastructure could not accommodate the number of students seeking housing, nor could the burden be effectively shifted onto the local rental market. In response, MSU expanded dramatically in the early post-war era, erecting a large volume of temporary residential units. In time for the start of the 1946 fall semester, hundreds of veteran students, many with families, were residing in the college's temporary housing area in a variety of temporary structures. At its peak, this area included 449 demountable trailers for families, 104 Quonset huts housing 1,456 single men, steel barracks housing another 240 single men, 1,100 family structures, and 50 temporary houses for new faculty. One of the largest communities in the temporary housing area was Spartan City, also called GI Village and the Quonset Hut Village, which consisted of 441 Quonset and prefabricated homes designed for married veteran students and their families. The families of Spartan City built a tight-knit community that included a resident-run co-op grocery store, nursery school, and community organizations that organized social events and petitioned the college for infrastructure and welfare improvements. In this image of one of the single-family Quonsets in Spartan City, you can see a child's tricycle in the front yard. By planning the construction of permanent housing early on, accessing public and private funds, and shifting the burden of dormitory financing onto students, college administrators were able to successfully transition the bulk of its temporary housing to permanent facilities by the 1960s. As a result, the Spartan City community was mostly demolished between 1956 and 1962 to make way for new dormitory buildings and married student apartments. The destruction of Spartan City coincided with changes in refuse dumping at Michigan State, mainly the establishment of a sanitary landfill area on campus in the mid-1950s. When mapped in 1963, this 14.5 hectare mixed-use landfill consisted of several distinct sections, including an incinerator, various dumps, a compost pile, a radioactive disposal area, and an active filling operation. In 1965, MSU's T.B. Simon power plant was built in the landfill area adjacent to the northernmost portion of the active filling section. In June 2020, CAP archaeologists were notified that construction work under Service Road in front of the T.B. Simon power plant had encountered a vast array of archaeological materials in a construction trench. Preliminary analysis of the artifacts indicated that the deposits were part of a midden dating to the mid-20th century and contained materials related to the university. From June to August, CAP archaeologists monitored construction activity, documenting a 2,728 square meter portion of the midden and collecting a sample of the many hundreds of artifacts from backdirt piles and construction trenches. Artifacts recovered included glass bottles and jars, transfer print and decal decorated ceramics, institutional wares decorated with the Michigan State seal, drinking vessels, cans, vehicle parts, newspapers, flyers, film, and other ephemera. A subset of the artifact assemblage recovered from the Service Road midden, child and family-related artifacts, a plastic memorial cross, and a U.S. Army sharpshooter medal stood out. These materials, along with the archival evidence that dated the dump to the late 1950s and early 1960s, indicates that some of the artifacts recovered related to the post-World War II temporary housing, including Spartan City. The remainder of this presentation explores in greater depth the cosmetic and institutional wares recovered from the Service Road midden. A study of MSU's institutional ware ceramics provides both a reliable way to date the midden deposit and, by exploring their decorative styles, identify the places on campus where they were used and thus where some of the assemblage may have come from. A study of cosmetic and bodily hygiene products provides insights into the negotiation of gendered identities on a campus that, for the first time, included a large proportion of married students and their families. While CAP archaeologists are continuing to catalog the materials excavated from Service Road, 4 distinguishable decorative patterns of underglazed, decal-decorated institutional ware ceramic have been identified thus far. Veteran students would have encountered institutional wares while in dining halls, including the large Quonset cafeteria pictured here, where single veteran students would have consumed most of their on-campus meals. One question driving the study of institutional ceramics recovered from the service road midden was if any patterns may have been commissioned by the university for use in specific spaces on campus. The first identified pattern in the institutional ware assemblage discussed here has been termed MSU Green-band by cap archaeologists. MSU Green-band vessels have a singular deep green band below the rim, with some vessel shapes featuring the seal of Michigan State College or Michigan State University, reflecting the school's name change in 1955. While the majority of these vessels seem to have been produced by the Shenango China Company, several vessels were manufactured by the Maya China Company, suggesting that the school bought vessels of this pattern from multiple producers. MSU Green-band seems to have been the most enduring ceramic style used in MSU dining halls during the study period, with the earliest example in the assemblage dating to 1950 and the latest to 1963, coinciding with the last year of deposition of materials at the Service Road Landfill. Additionally, vessels decorated with this pattern make up the majority of the recovered institutional ware assemblage. Preliminary evidence shows that this pattern was seemingly commissioned for use across the campus's dining halls. The second ceramic pattern we identified has been termed cross-stitch. The cross-stitch pattern consists of squares arranged in a floral motif meant to resemble traditional cross-stitching patterns. The flower colors alternate between red and blue, with green stems and leaves between each flower running just below the rims of vessels. Cross-stitch ceramics were recovered with both Maya China and Shenango China logos, suggesting that, as with the MSU Green-band pattern, the university purchased ceramics of this pattern from multiple companies. Photographs from Michigan State archives featuring this pattern seem to suggest that it was used in women's dining halls on campus from 1948 into the 1960s and may have been unique to those facilities. This suspicion is bolstered by the normative association of the activity of cross-stitching with hegemonic constructions of feminine domesticity. The third identified pattern is listed as mobile and seems to have been solely manufactured by the Shenango China Company. This pattern consists of a fading gray band along the rim and a singular black and gray baby-mobile motif that then extends from the rim to the larger undecorated portion of the vessel. The date range for recovered fragments of this pattern span from July 1951 to June 1961. The mobile pattern was created in 1951 specifically for Michigan State's new Kellogg Center for Continuing Education. The center expanded on MSU's on-campus hotel to train students in the School of Hospitality Business. The final identified pattern of institutional wares we will discuss here is a variation on Shenango China's Esquire pattern. While similar aesthetically to the original Shenango China Esquire design, vessels recovered from the Service Road landfill had rectangular motifs rather than squares, and the laurels extend further along stretches of the design. This may indicate that the design found at Service Road was custom-made for Michigan State. While we have not been able to definitively determine any specific context of use for the Esquire-like pattern, an examination of the relative proportions of ceramic styles over time, in which the Esquire pattern makes up an increasing percentage of recovered ceramics from the early 1960s, may indicate that it was meant to supplement or replace the MSU Green-band pattern as the dominant ceramic pattern in university dining halls. This investigation of institutional wares at Michigan State has shown that materials in the Service Road midden came from several areas of campus, including dining halls and the Kellogg Center, and indicates that the presence or absence of some of these styles may be a way to date campus sites in the future. Further, our work here suggests that ceramics used in these spaces may have been imbricated in the production of gendered meanings on a changing campus in the mid-20th century. Another component of the Service Road assemblage prioritized in our initial cataloging efforts have been various cosmetic and bodily hygiene products. As highly personal objects implicated in self-presentation and the negotiation of gendered identities, these items assisted in thinking about some of the meanings invested in mundane practices of bodily care within campus residential spaces. For the sake of brevity, we have focused on hair care and odor-related products for this presentation. Due to a lack of reliable sources for dating these objects, we had to turn to less conventional sources. One fruitful methodology entailed searching aggregative newspaper archive databases and examining the timing of advertising campaigns for specific products. While some cautions are needed in this approach, this method consistently provided reliable dates for the introduction of specific products, container redesigns, and allowed for the identification of proprietary bottle and jar forms with absent or fragmentary paper labels. Hair care products in the assemblage consist primarily of shampoos, both cream-style products typically contained within white milk glass containers, and liquid formulations primarily in colorless glass bottles. Aside from one plastic Prel shampoo tube, the liquid formulation containers display an understandable preoccupation with the reliability of grippage, using embossed lines or ergonomic shapes to avoid broken glass in the shower. Another substantial presence within the assemblage was a large quantity of scent-related products such as perfumes, colognes, deodorants, and scented lotions. As with the shampoos, the deodorants in this collection represent both older cream-based formulations and emergent forms that are perhaps more recognizable today, such as liquid roll-ons and solid stick deodorants. Using advertisements to date proprietary container shapes for products recovered in the service road assemblage also offered an opportunity to begin considering some aspects of the meanings invested in these products. One example is in relation to the simultaneous presence of both older cream-based forms of deodorant alongside newer formulations of these products in liquid or solid forms. Some ads, such as these examples from Dateline and Band deodorants, seem to rely on positioning their products as innovations that outperformed previous cream-style products, suggesting some level of investment in the notion that mid-century scientific progress offered to transform and simplify everyday life, and in this case, quotidian practices of bodily care. Dateline in particular relied on casting other deodorant forms as antiquated, claiming that the product represented what mother doesn't know and was made exclusively for our age, thus tethering newer product types and the regimes of bodily care they entailed with conceptions of youthfulness and modernity. The simultaneous presence of various forms of deodorant may thus represent an increasing age diversity among campus residents and divergent levels of consumer investment in these advertised meanings. This dynamic may also be reflected in products associated with dyed hair, including several bottles of Clairol Color Safe shampoo and a bottle of golden apricot shade Clairol hair dye. Given that such products were primarily advertised to women beyond the traditional ages of college attendees in the mid-20th century, the presence of these objects may also speak to the changing demographics of the university with the establishment of married and family student housing on campus. Advertisements for perfumes, colognes, and aftershave lotions often position these commodities as granting an air of distinctly gendered refinement to the consumer. For products primarily marketed towards men, these ads invoked the idea of a refined gentleman through associations with English and Scottish masculinities, as indicated by these ads for King's Men and Seaforth products. Taking this to a humorous extreme, Seaforth's cologne utilized a white milk glass container shaped to resemble a stoneware whiskey jug. For products marketed towards women, a similar air of gendered refinement was articulated in relationship to France in the advertising for products such as Avon's Topaz fragrance, Jean Naté afterbath lotion, and Revlon's gold-toned petite compact designed by Van Cleef and Arpels. Advertising for brands of deodorant marketed towards women relatively consistently took the form of what has been called scare copy, advertising that aimed to motivate consumption by animating fears of social ostracization. These ads, which typically portray concerned women in presumably romantic scenarios with men well compromised by body odor, framed failure to properly discipline the body as entailing a risk of exclusion from the world of romantic and sexual success and thus, within a heteronormative frame, ostracization from normative femininity. In contrast, ads for men's deodorant rarely present failure to use such products as a risk of social ostracization. Brands such as Men's Break deodorant instead emphasize supposed body size differences and pointing towards the inadequacy of smaller women's roll-ons for man-sized underarms. Thus, while failure to integrate deodorant into regimes of bodily care entailed both a risk of romantic failure and exclusion from normative femininities, men's deodorant ads positioned use of such products as solely a confirmation of manliness. The securing of masculinity through bodily care regimes may have taken on additional weight in a time of increasing attendance of women students in the post-war era, compelling a more rigid delineation of gendered boundaries on campus. However, an analysis of consumptive meanings animated solely through advertising risks consigning agency and processes of meaning-making to the whims of marketers, painting consumers as passive recipients of predetermined meanings rather than active participants in their construction and negotiation. What is instead necessary is a framework that can adequately consider the myriad ways such items were made meaningful within historically and locally specific social worlds. One fitting framework is sociologist Deborah Gimlin's concept of bodywork, a term she uses to describe how cosmetic products and procedures constitute a means to negotiate the relationship between body and self in the context of a social structure and culture that simultaneously provide resources for the creation of identities and place limits on those identities. Interpreting cosmetic and bodily hygiene products from this collection as forms of bodywork allows us to move beyond positioning regimes of bodily care as simply an imposed expectation, and instead consider the multifaceted and heterogeneous ways such products were implicated in the production of gendered meanings and identities. So that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening and stay safe. We'd also like to extend a special thanks to Christopher Barton for organizing this session, and please feel free to reach out with any questions you may have had about our presentation.